You're at your old trusty boat. You call mighty sparrow. I'm in the city of Mardi Gras.
Welcome to the Sailing into Oblivion podcast, where we sit down with everyday people who do extraordinary things. I'm your host, Jerome Rand. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Today, I sit down with friend of the show, Dobbs. He is back. Yes, he was very, very coincidentally in Michigan, in Dexter, when I came down for my talk. He was only up here on a little kind of vacation from the BVI down there, where he's been since, that's, I think, seven or 8 years now. But always a pleasure to have him on the show, full of enthusiasm, full of information about the BVI. We're going to talk about how that's made its recovery back into pretty much full swing. Then we just sort of hit on some topics kind of all over the place, from my presentations to just about anything. Love having him on the show. Really just a great guy and an awesome friend who I definitely look up to, man. He's absolutely killing it in every endeavor that he's doing, and it's always just a pleasure to sit down and have an uninterrupted hour with this young man. So always great to see him and how he is just really killing it at life, and really, really awesome. But before we start the show, like I always say, if you want to become part of the supporting crew, the family, the Patreon family, follow the link in the description, and you too could help support this show and support, honestly, the next adventures that are coming up down the line. You know, Mighty Sparrow's not cheap, and I need to make sure I take care of her like she takes care of me. You know, doing these presentations, I sit there and I watch the punishment over and over that I put that boat through, and I want to make sure I get her nice, neat, and ready to go. And that necessitates a little bit of monetary support. So I definitely appreciate everybody who has already stuck with me for so long. It really, really means a lot, and it's why I keep going. And I keep plugging away. Obviously, we still got the merch line. I'm wearing one of the shirts right now. The fit is so lovely. These T-shirts, I tell you, they're just the right kind. They're not too big, not too sloppy, anything like that. And I have them in 7 different lines. So pretty cool stuff. You can follow the link for those. Other than that, if you want to reach out to the show, sailingintooblivion.com. and follow the podcast link and contact the show. Those go directly to me. And one more time, another shout out for Sail Junkie. Check it out. You know, you can see lots of, fellow sailors writing in good articles, things like that. And you definitely want to check that one out. So well worth it. I'll put a link in the description as well. But other than that, let's get on with Dobbs and Jerome on the show. Once again, thanks for listening. So I have all that stuff on. So for on the YouTube channel,
yeah,
I have underneath is like the merch shelf, and I
Cool.
put out, I don't know, like 5 different ones of pictures and stuff like that of my own, and then this guy Mike who runs Sail Junkie, which is like it's like Sailing Anarchy, but. So it's all this different sailing news, but it's mostly like people writing in articles and stuff, their own experience. It's really cool.
Like cruisers or like racers or what?
Everything, anything. And, anybody can submit stuff there. And it's a great website. He reached out to me, and he actually sent me this really cool drawing that he used like an AI program, but it's got like Mighty Sparrow in it, and it's got all these Easter eggs where it's essentially like there's a little picture of Captain Ron hidden away, and all that, and Joe versus Volcano, his luggage is floating around Sparrow. But it's a really cool rendering of this nice little scene. But yeah, I don't know. It's been fun. It's one of those things where in my line of work, you have to utilize all these little facets that might just generate a little bit of revenue. And if they all come together and start to grow, then you can actually, because the goal here is just to self-sustain.
Yeah,
I'm not there yet, but I'm getting closer every presentation, every podcast. Welcome back to the show, by the way, Dobbs.
Are we live?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, we're just doing it?
I just keep like...
I was wondering. I was like, I feel like I don't know if I want to stop this momentum right now because it feels like we're talking about things, but let's ride.
All right, I'm just going to turn the volume down a little because you hear Dobbs before you see him. That old shtick.
No, me?
Yeah, a little bit.
No way. Could
No,
it?
you're good.
Quiet voice and small head. That's what people say about me.
That's an exact perfect rendering. But no, friend of the show this year, second time, right?
Yeah, second time
First
on.
time was at Jeromestown.
Yeah, up in Petoskey.
Dude, I didn't get to set that place up this year.
At all?
Nah, well, because
Weren't you? Wait, I feel like you were up there, though.
I was up there working at camp and stuff. The only problem is I was living on site. And if you set up Jeromestown and you're not there every night, the raccoons, porcupines, they're squatters.
Move in.
Man. They move right
Take
in.
over.
I'd peel back that comforter on that bed. There'd be a whole family living in there.
Well, it's so comfortable.
It
They're
is.
loving
It really is. Yeah, I did miss it though. That idea of your only entertainment for the evening is definitely not a TV. It's a nice fire and the sound.
Of
the
Jeromestown.
woods. Yeah, of Jeromestown. So I don't know. It was pretty cool. But I wanted to ask you like straight off the bat, how's the BVI? You've
Awesome.
been down there. You just came back. You're about to go back down.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fully back.
Fully back.
It went
Nice.
through some drama. I mean, Hurricane Irma 2017. Yeah, destruction, peril. It was crazy to see. And a lot of people's lives were uprooted. I mean, I'm lucky enough where I have a home back here in Michigan and family that I could come back to. But for the local Islanders that we're friends with, Kinto, Michael, Lenford, everybody that we know, it was a totally different experience.
Yeah.
And rebuilding their houses, rebuilding the resorts that they worked in, getting their jobs back, just getting life kind of restarted. It took years.
Yeah, years. I remember talking with Sean, and he was saying, they were living pretty much underneath a tarp still for, I don't know, for how long after that happened. Because, everything goes so slow construction-wise and change and everything down there. But you're saying now things are pretty much tuned
Ripping.
right back up.
Yeah, and then obviously it was just getting back, like February 2020, and then COVID.
And then COVID, yeah.
Boom,
yeah.
BVI closes the borders. 8 months of no one in or out of the country. Tourism completely shut down. And then all of the regulations in place, which made it harder to come in and testing.
Yep.
And you had to, show all these negatives. And if you tested positive, you had to quarantine so people didn't come. So that season was still a little slower. Last season kind of ramped up, or the season after that kind of ramped up. And then last season, it felt like it was back to pre-Irma BVI, super yachts in the North Sound, charter boats everywhere, people fighting for mooring balls at the Bitter End Yacht Club. It was great. And everywhere, it feels like everywhere's back open. Bitter End Yacht Club is back open. Sabre Rock is back open. Leverick's open. Oil Nut Bay is open in the North Sound. Everywhere on Anegada's opened. Willie T's open at Norman. Cooper Island Beach Club. Even Marina Key just reopened in July over by
really?
Scrub Island and Trellis
yeah.
Bay. They had been shut since the storm, and they've now got fuel back, water back, the docks open, a really cute little kind of Caribbean vibe bar and restaurant, and a boatload of mooring balls. They probably got 35 or 40 balls out there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And that's right at, is that Scrub Island?
Yep, right
Yeah, it's on Scrub,
between
okay.
Trellis and Scrub.
Right, okay. Because, there's Marina Key, which is that little itty-bitty island, right?
Yep, that's what I'm talking about.
That's the one you're talking about. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Oh, wow. I didn't realize it took them that long. Was that, let me ask you, in Trellis Bay, what's the name of that bar that's right in the middle on that island? The Last Resort?
Last Resort.
Is that, because I know that was wasn't that closed down before Irma?
I don't know if it was closed before Irma. I feel like it wasn't because I feel like, well, maybe. That might have been a different season. Do you remember that one season where we were closing down Better End Water Sports and Lincoln and Ross went to a party at Last Resort the night before?
gosh.
And then we had the
Yep.
pack down day and they
Uh-huh.
came back. They missed the ferry or something.
And they were
so
pretty late.
they came in super late that morning for like
Yeah.
one of our busiest days of the year.
And
We
they
were-
weren't happy when I told them they had to stay and, and work and fill in those last few hours. Boy, I remember that was a battle. Boy.
Yeah.
Well, hey, it's never the easiest thing running a team like that.
So
And,
I
the
remember
things
that it
they
was
got.
at least open then. I don't know if it closed before Irma, but no, that place is still completely shut down. Funny story about that, though. There is a wrecked West Sail 32
Yes.
sitting on Last Resort.
I remember who bought that. I don't want to shout any names out or anything like that, but yeah, it was purchased pretty much within months, and then months before the hurricane came, and then it did. It ended up getting wrecked, but it was in pretty rough shape at the start.
For sure.
Most of the West sales that are just changing hands over and over, it's really just the hull you're trying to buy, but. Yeah, I remember seeing that when I was down there. I was like, oh, no. It's a little heart-wrenching when you see, one of your boats, because the West Sail group and the West Sail family, they're like our kids, these boats that are out there, and you see them. You come across them in almost every marina, and sometimes they're, like, beautiful. And sometimes you're like, oh, no.
Yeah, I remember the one that you were working with the couple who had just bought it, and you were like,
unreal.
You see your voice? It's like you found a Da Vinci painting the way you described this.
When I arrived there, and the guy Mark, friend of the show, he's been on here. He's sitting there, and he invites me in. I literally was speechless when I walked down. I just didn't even know a West Sail could look like that. I just didn't know. And it had been previously owned by a former astronaut who had it for a long time, and I want to say he had it out of the water for nearly a decade, and that was his pet project. He was just like, I'm going to rebuild this from the hull up to a standard, and I think he contracted out the people at like Pacific Seacraft, which is more high end, because essentially West Sail's unbeatable in strength for sure. But they were, I don't want to say cheap boats when they came out of the factory, but they weren't fancy. Let's say that. They were functional, they were hardy, but they weren't like you would think of a yacht.
That was kind of the idea, right? It was like the everyman's cruiser.
Exactly.
Let's open this up to families to go see all sides of the world's oceans.
Right, 100%. And this one, I would say, I mean, it's got to be one of the finest examples of that boat. It's like the perfect barn find of that Ferrari that's been sitting there under a cover for 35 years. It's like, oh, what have we found? And that was one of the coolest experiences, because that sort of opened my eyes up to, in the past I had thought about doing some sort of private sailing instruction, stuff like that. But, you have to have all these certifications and all that sort of stuff. But I was able to sort of worm my way around that by saying, well, you can hire me on as sort of a consultant, like an expert, to just come in and I can share my knowledge with you. We're not using my boat, so I don't really have to have insurance or anything like that on something like that. Because the world of teaching sailing, there's a lot of sort of protocols that you have to go through to make it legal. If something does happen, you can be in serious trouble, right? But if I'm just coming on to sort of consult with you and make you feel more comfortable on your vessel, that's a whole different story. I mean, I would think, I don't really know. Maybe I shouldn't even be talking about it. But I don't know. It was such a great experience, because the couple were wonderful and the boat was great. Mostly, I would say 80, well, not 80, maybe like 70% of it was all marina boat handling skills. And it was great because that marina and that dock and those piers were they're sort of the nightmare situation where, the ideal situation is you have your boat docked up on the face dock on the end of a pier. It's super easy to get in and out, and you can do it in any conditions. Well, theirs was like 7 piers deep, way in a very tiny fairway, and you have, instead of a big nice finger pier, you have a little 10-foot section that's super narrow and tippy that's connected to a piling, and you have to tie off onto the 2 pilings as you come in, and it's like it was like the challenge course. And
yeah, it sounds like Labyrinth.
Yeah, it was like getting these guys comfortable to feel, or getting them to feel comfortable being able to go in and practice and stuff. And that was the goal. I've always said that with sailing instruction, I'm not here to make you the greatest sailor. If you're starting at ground zero, you're essentially, I'm trying to get you comfortable to go out and practice and become the sailor you want to be. Not like, I don't want anybody to expect, like, at the end of a lesson, they're going to be like, boom, I got this. I want them to feel like, okay, now I'm going to go practice because I know I'm not going to go hurt myself.
How do the West Sails do under power? I know we've talked a lot about sailing the West Sail, but I'd like maneuvering in tight quarters.
It's a little tricky. You have to get used to it, that full keel and that big rudder. But I will say I've got a very simple setup, just a standard fixed 3-blade prop. And Sparrow does all right. It's pretty hard to get her to go straight in reverse. You have to, if I'm going to reverse into a slip, I'm going to go about a quarter mile that way and then start, because it'll kind of snake and stuff, and you have to pay attention to the wind.
It's like a tank. Yeah. Just got to get her rolling a little bit.
Exactly. Kind of like Cosmic Warlord. Remember that?
Of course.
It had the folding racing prop, and you put that in reverse, and like nothing happened for about 27 minutes. And then you would slowly go. But they had a nicer engine for sure. I don't think it was any more powerful, but the prop that they had, I believe it's called a max prop. I could be wrong on that, but it essentially, when you put it in reverse, the blades just flip. And for whatever reason, it was really nice. You were able to use, there's a thing called prop walk, where when you put it in reverse, the prop's spinning one way, and it actually kind of acts like it's gripping the water, and it'll pull the boat or the stern of the boat in that direction, only for a little bit until it gains some speed. But you can utilize that to do like a full 360 without the boat moving from its position. So you put it in reverse, you get the prop walk a little, then you slam it over and you put it in forward, and then you turn the opposite way, and you kind of can continue that. Well, with their boat, when you know which direction the prop walk is going, you just put the tiller over to the opposite way, and you can just go reverse for a few seconds, neutral, forward, and then it counters it, and back. And that boat maneuvered 10 times better than Sparrow does. Like, I can't do that with my boat. But
you think that was the prop?
I'm pretty
sure. Is there a difference?
The prop, yeah. I mean, it has to be, because our hulls were identical. They didn't have any of the fancy. There's I believe I can't remember the guy's name, but somebody won the Transpac on corrected time in a West Sail back in the 90s.
Yeah, I remember hearing about this.
And he had done this modification where he essentially filled in the gaps in between the hull and the rudder, because there's these big gudgeons and that connect the rudder to the hull, and they're super oversized on a West Sail, and there's bolts that stick out.
Which we like for a long distance ocean cruiser.
But if you can get a nice flush, beautiful line and end that gap, there's like an inch wide gap in between the rudder and the hull. And so that creates a bunch of turbulence. So essentially he does this modification, with like foam and fiberglass or whatever, and fills all that in, so it's just one smooth, beautiful thing, just like, any racing yacht would be. I think he gained like a half a knot or a knot of boat speed overall.
Which made a huge difference for the, rating on a West Sail over a race like the Transpac. I mean, obviously the guy won the thing.
And it had never, it had never been done before. He was a pioneer of it. So essentially, he was working off the original rating, which is a boat that has a hull speed of, let's say, 5 knots, but now he's getting 6, which might not sound like much, but if 1 knot off of that, that's another like 20% of boat speed. That's huge over a long distance ocean race like that. So I thought about doing it.
You did?
I did. I wanted to. I just never.
Before the big trip, or what? At what point?
Not the big trip. I think it was for the second trip, but everything was so sort of last minute, because trying to get permission to go through the Northwest Passage and all that sort of stuff. As soon as they gave it to me, I had only like a month or a couple extra weeks of prep time, and I was more concerned about the ice. So I had to protect the bobstay, where there's a big fat wire that comes from the tip of the bowsprit down to the hull, and if I'm plunging through ice, that thing will get mangled up. And so some of the experts that were looking at my boat, they were like, yeah, that you definitely have to. And I ended up cutting up a big rigs tire and through bolting a couple layers of that right at that little pinch point. So
really up on the bow.
Yeah,
you just had tire around the bowsprit of Sparrow.
I had it
man, that's how you know a boat's going into the thick of it. You see the guy pulling out of the marina with the tires, Captain Ron style. You know he's going somewhere.
Hey, throw them rubber bumper things over. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. But yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things. To back to our original point, like it was really cool to go and hop on that boat and just see the possibilities. Because Sparrow, Sparrow's very basic, and when it's in offshore super long distance mode, and I build that big cabinet in, you just feel like you're in a capsule that's got a purpose, I guess. But I don't worry about where I'm setting my cup of coffee down.
Of course.
I got on this boat and I was like, I don't want to touch anything. I put sunscreen on. I don't want to accidentally rub against some of this because the varnish was just perfect.
Yeah, I remember seeing some of the videos.
Oh, smokes, yeah. And I think there's something to be said for having that. But at the same time, with my experiences now, I see that as just like, oh, that's a lot of upkeep and well worth it. But even when I used to have those Boston Whalers and I'd paint them all fancy with the maize and blue colors, put a sticker on, it was always great because it was like, man, that is a hot looking boat. It looked like a little Ferrari or a little Lotus or something. But that you had to keep cleaning it. And then at the end of the season, when it's all dinged up and you don't have to worry about it, you just hop in and out of it. And I think, if I'm going to be honest, that's my style.
A little more of a utility. Yeah. Let's just go anywhere.
Let's hop in. Let's not worry about keeping the thing cherry. I mean, come on.
Yeah, you should see the condition of my new boat that I got down in the BVI.
Oh, do tell.
So I just picked up hilariously, you were always like, I couldn't live here and not have a boat.
Gotta have a boat.
That was always your setup.
Yeah.
So I followed your advice. The budget was a little lower. Unfortunately, the dream boat was a 15-foot Boston Whaler.
Yeah.
Couldn't quite afford that.
Right.
So what I bought first was a 10-foot dinghy.
Yeah.
Rubber rib with a
tiller drive. And everything?
Well, that's the fun part. That's where Bronco Billy, as it's fondly called, becomes exciting. So on the back, it had one of those old school 30 Yamaha 2-strokes.
Okay, a lot of power.
Lot of power on a 10-foot rib. And this thing, it wouldn't start on the first pull. She took a little bit to warm up. Mm-hmm. But when she started, just like me, you weren't sneaking up on anybody. This thing's throttling. Little smoke coming out. Love that smell of 2-stroke in the morning. I'd wake up all Electric Bay every time I started my boat going into work. But the funniest part about this is it looks like your classic 10-foot rib that all the charter boats have down there with they're getting their tender to and from shore.
Right.
But this one had been modified. And so in the front, it has a huge storage compartment. Okay. And then it's got an actual steering wheel and a throttle and then a saddle seat down the middle.
Oh, wow.
And this guy was using them for island tours based out of Nanny Key. Uh-huh. He was like, locals would sign up for $125 and he'd take them to literally, he'd go across the Willie T and Norman Island on flat days on these, but he was like, it got too crazy. It was like people were coming,
falling off of that thing.
Yeah,
Jeez.
Exactly. And so he sold them and I got my hands on one and it was an epically hilarious North Sound runabout.
Oh, I'm sure.
This thing was great and so fun to drive. Certainly dangerous.
Yeah.
Way overpowered. You had to have that kill cord on. You could definitely get launched.
He's kind of like a jet ski in a way.
Yeah,
right?
That was what everybody said. Either looks like a jet ski or a tennis shoe cruising around the North Sound.
A tennis shoe.
Yeah. That's what it looks like. So I actually still have that. It's going to be for sale if anyone in the British Virgin Islands is listening and wants to buy a 10-foot jet ski. I'm selling it because I just picked up a 15-foot rib.
Oh, nice.
Not old charter boat. Charter boat was selling it as their old tender. They're upgrading for next season. And so they were giving it away, basically. And I heard about it. And so I jumped on the opportunity. But this old girl, she's got there was the catamarans, they had davits to hold this boat on the back. Uh-huh. And I think the davits were built for a 14-foot tender. Yeah. And this is 15. So when they're out, have it up, it's banging on the front, banging on the back. And so she's definitely cosmetically, I wouldn't say she's gorgeous, but she holds air like a champ. I haven't had to pump her once, and I've had her for 3 or 4 months now.
Nice.
But I'm with you on. I'm like, at this point, what am I going to do? I'm going to take this boat out and try to silicone all these little hanging pieces off. I'm like, nah, we're jumping in and we're going adventuring.
What's the boat for? Is the boat for looking at?
or is the boat for using?
Yeah, and I
it
think
sounds
it's for
that one's
using.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that that was kind of the sort of yin and yang of working on that 17 up in Michigan. Was I was like, okay, well,
We're
this
talking
boat,
now about
little
sailboat, not
restoration.
not a powerboat anymore.
Well, we had to, yeah. I mean, with this one, we had to. I was sort of always just back and forth between, I want to make this nice as possible so it looks great. Because I mean, half the appeal to that old classic style is how it looks when it's sitting on a mooring. But at the same time, I was like, I got to make this thing super crazy strong, and I can't worry too much about that part. So I don't know. It's one of those things. I feel like a dinghy down in the islands. You just want to be able to rip that sucker up the beach, like throw a bunch of beer in it, whatever. Not ever even think like, oh, my feet are sandy. I better go rinse them off. No. And it does. How many good times have you had on that freaking thing, dude?
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, every morning I feel so lucky. I drive my car down to Leverick Bay. I walk from it, boat sitting there on the dock, I hop right in, fire her up, and then I just drive my boat into work.
Yeah.
That's my commute with my morning coffee, maybe cruise by a super yacht or two, take in the sights.
Yeah.
And then mosey my way onto the dock at work, and let's start the day.
Do you ever have, though, I mean, getting up to Oil Nut, I mean, Bitter End, it was always pretty protected, but when it's like rough, dude, do you have like a change of clothes up at Oil Nut?
Oh, so Bronco Billy, the 10-footer?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. That was a wet ride.
I wear my Speedo on the transfer up there, and then I shower.
Usually my go-to is I try to go to the gym before work, and so I just wear the gym clothes in. And it doesn't matter if I get wet because I'm going to go work out and get sweaty anyway.
Yeah.
And then I will shower after that. But if that wasn't the case, or when my wife was coming up with me there, just full raincoat and galoshes on Bronco. Right. And there's certainly, anytime it was above about 20 knots, that was about the capacity for Bronco Billy to go into work.
Oh, okay.
Especially with the wife on the back.
Because that's right. They would still run a ferry up there for the rest of the staff, right?
Oh, yeah. So I could hop on the ferry.
Okay.
It was just, it's so nice to be on my own time.
Dude, I know. There's something about that. I think that's why Americans still are so willing to like commute in their own cars. When you even if you're just on the highway, there's something about being in your car and you're making your way. I don't know. I think it's ingrained in us as a nation.
Yeah, it might be why I love it so much. But now in the 15, I went up we had like a tropical wave blowing through back in August or September, blowing 30 plus, and I went up and got a couple drops on me. I mean, it was perfect. Oh, wow. Yeah, I handled it like a champ.
That's nice.
So that boat goes up and everything now.
And is that one tiller driven, or does that have a?
No, dude, it's got a 70 Yamaha on the back, full center console. It's a proper rib.
Yeah. Nice. God. Whatever happened to my old Boston Whaler, the 15?
I don't know. Chris, or the Bitter End Boatwright, I know, bought it and was fixing it up.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it. I can ask him. I don't know.
Probably flipped it, sold it for about 7 times more than I sold it to him.
Probably.
I was always, for me, when it came to like selling boats and stuff, I just wanted to not be hassled by trying to find the best buyer and the best price and this. I was always just like, man, you'll give me some money for it, it's yours.
Yeah.
I just want to be done with it. I'm free and clear. And that's how I mean, even with like when I haven't owned a car in almost a decade now, but the last car that I had, I looked at the Blue Book value. It said, like $7,000 or something like that. And I put it online for like $5,000 and was just like,
first buyer.
Boom. I sold that thing in a day. And
yeah.
I was just like, done.
Well, it's a lot of work. You got to people are going to come and test drive, and then they're going to not show up for it. And then you got to show it to 5, 6 different people. Next thing you know, you've spent 6, 7, 8 hours on just showing people.
How much is your time worth?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just about to say.
God,
Yeah, I'm valuable.
You are. $1 million man over here.
So, yeah, to get back to the BVI, man, it's been great. It feels like this season was officially back. Knock on wood, and so far we haven't had tropical storms that have been really effective yet.
Yeah, I know, right?
Obviously, we're still in it right now. I'm not going to jinx anything. It's still going on. But it's been a nice season so far. And, yeah, we're really excited. I mean, this season should be a busy one. down in the islands, and everyone's ripping and roaring.
Dude, that's awesome. It's so great to hear because it was like when it rains, it pours. You have that big hurricane, wiped everything out, and just as it was like, all right, it looks like we're getting ready to open again, boom, pandemic. And you really got to feel for a country which is really almost solely based on tourism to have two big hits like that. I feel like a third would have been the end. I mean, I do know that they have. It would be interesting to see, because there are some pretty high end successful billionaires that have made that place their home. Like Branson and Page and all these guys. And that's got to help make it sort of insured for the future as far as like a destination to go to. Like, I don't think it would ever get knocked completely back into, like, the dark ages where there's no more currency there. There's no ferries going in between the islands. Everybody's just fishing. I mean, that would have been cool to see, but that would have been pretty hard living, especially when it stopped raining for, 3-4 months, and you're like, oh, what do we do?
Yeah, and I think you're right. There's been so much money invested in the BVI that I think it'll be interesting what happens to see with the airport. They're talking about expanding the runway on Beef Island.
Oh, really?
Yep. They want to. Well, there's direct commercial flights
from Miami,
from
right?
Miami through American Airlines. They're still more expensive than the traditional methods of getting to the BVI. Fly to St. Thomas, take a ferry, or fly to Puerto Rico, San Juan, and then take like a smaller plane. The American flights, so far from what I've seen, are still more expensive, but convenience, is certainly there. Take out, from me getting there from Michigan, it's usually 3 flights, and now that would take it down to 2. So that makes your travel day significantly better.
And that's, I mean, that was always, again, I mean, to go back to how much is your time worth, you might save $50 if you do like this other route, but then, you're going to lose hours. And when you're trying to do a destination like the BVI, those hours count, man.
Oh, then the risk too. And now I have 2 flights. I got to make 1 connection. If I got 3 flights, I got to have 2 planes take off on time, and then 3 planes also take off on time to make that ferry that I have at the end of the trip. That's always been the blessing and the curse of the BVI, is how hard it is to get there.
Yeah,
and it's a blessing because
keeps out the riffraff.
Yeah, it does. And you're not walking into McDonald's and KFC. You're flying in, and it feels like this really genuine, like, unique local spots everywhere you go, and that's because it is. You've got iconic destinations, Cooper Island Beach Club, and Yost Van Dyke with the Soggy Dollar Bar, and Anegada Reef Hotel, and Cow Wreck, and it's all these locally run establishments. It's not the Marriott and the Hilton and the Ritz-Carlton. And that's what makes it so special. And it keeps people out too, so it's never super crowded, or at least almost never. But the curse is that it's a pain in the butt. You got to work to get down there.
No, for sure. Well, my go-to back in the day was always to fly into San Juan and then take one of those puddle jumpers direct to VG.
Oh, yeah.
But you just never knew. You never knew if that flight was going to get canceled, if they were just going to be like, you know what, we're just going to land in Tortola. Sorry.
You remember my first time? When I first ever came to the BVI to work for you?
I do.
That's exactly what happened.
I
was supposed to land on Virgin Gorda, and it got delayed taking off. And so we're literally in the air from San Juan, Puerto Rico on Air Sunshine, which Jerome had recommended to me as a place.
It's a bit of a gamble, but,
I literally had to, this is 2014. Like, it's not that long ago. I literally had to fax Air Sunshine my, boarding pass information. These guys were operating in the 80s still. It was a true inter-island airline.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my God, I get on this thing, the tail feather, I don't know what you call it on an airplane, is all painted with palm trees and Caribbean beach scenes.
A little bit of duct tape.
And I'm like, oh boy.
Streaming off the back.
And sure enough, we get in the air and we're flying into what I think is Virgin Gorda. Jerome's going to meet me there. He's going to take me over to the Better End Yacht Club. I'm so excited to see where I'm going to be living. And we're in the air, and the pilot just looks back and he's like, hey guys, got a little bit too late with the delay because of sunset happening. We're going to have to land on Tortola.
Yep.
In my head, I'm like, what's Tortola? Had done zero research on the British Virgin Islands before deciding to move there, it turns out. I'm like, that's not good. I'm supposed to be on Virgin Gorda.
Yeah.
And so,
Is that the same country?
yeah, I had no idea. But it's really loud, so I can't really be asking these questions.
right.
And so we land, and I start to figure this out, and finding out that I'm close to Virgin Gorda, but there's we'd already missed the last ferry, but there's maybe this like North Sound Express thing that's running to the North Sound. So I'm all excited to get on that boat, and then out of nowhere, I just hear Dabbler. And Jerome comes like running up to the airport, and
Dun, 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 dun.
yeah, literally just my hero, Captain Jack Sparrow style. And it was so flat that night.
Breathless out there. Yeah.
I mean, you could not normally do this, but you brought your 15-foot Boston Whaler all the way to Trellis Bay, Beef Island. We loaded all my luggage in, and we ripped back up to the North Sound.
That was one of the best entrances or introductions, I should say, to having a staff come to the BVI I've ever been able to. And it all just worked out because of the weather, obviously. But I can't remember how I knew that they were going to close it because you didn't have to wait all that long.
At Tortola?
Yeah.
Oh,
you
not
pretty
at
much
all.
landed, and then
Oh, I
I was
remember.
already there. Yeah. I think somebody had been like, dude, he's never going to land on VG.
You were at the Virgin Gorda
Recall.
Airport. You were talking to our immigration friend, Judy Ann, and Judy Ann was like, Jerome, dude, they just called. They're going to Tortola.
Right,
Like, you're
right,
not
right.
going to land here. And you were like, ah!
Yeah, and then I think because I was borrowing somebody's car or something, I zipped back to Gun Creek where the boat was. Luckily, it was fueled up. And I think I stopped at Bucks and grabbed a whole bunch of Schaefer's and then just hit the road. And
Sounds
we
about
just
right.
went, yeah. Oh, man. And it's, I don't know exactly the mileage, but it's going to be like 7 miles of not open ocean, but Sir Francis Drake Passage. And
It can
or
get gnarly
channel.
out there.
It can get gnarly when it's windy. But yeah, like we said, I mean, those conditions, it was flat comp. So I'm just pedal to the metal, full throttle. And I got down there. Oh my God. It actually, I was so happy because I knew how fun that is to be out in that little Boston Whaler and just, man.
I was in love from that moment. I was like, oh, this is normal. Like,
Yeah.
No, everybody gets in from the Tortola Airport, huh? This is sweet. Like, what a place.
Oh my gosh! Well, it's been so amazing to bring people down there on my sort of recommendation or whatever, and have you guys outlast me even staying there. And
There's a couple of us
still
hanging
just
on.
killing it. Yeah, it really is. Like, it's amazing to see, and I'm so glad that because I know you guys are just bringing so much to that community and that country. I mean, when you're dealing with such a small place. What is it, 27,000 people?
There's a little more. It's over 30, but basically,
Is it
yeah.
over 30? Okay. But I mean, like they used to, I remember Dolores used to have that sort of ambassador program at the bitter end where, for people who are really doing a great job engaging with the guests, they sort of were like these ambassadors for it. But I think you guys have done that as a whole for the entire country, really. Because anytime it's like you guys have that mindset, as Brooks would say, you've got that juicing sort of factor where when people are visitors, you hone in on them and you guys just nail it every single time. And so like, I don't know, you just helped create what makes that country so wonderful and so special.
Yeah, it's a special place. I mean, it's easy to love.
Yeah.
The natural beauty, aesthetically, it's so gorgeous. You wake up in the morning and everywhere you look is just jaw-dropping beauty.
Oh, yeah.
But then from there, there's the activities. I mean, if you like the water, there's nowhere better. Sailing, snorkeling, kiteboarding, scuba diving, windsurfing, e-foiling, beach combing, just drinking. I mean, there's something literally for everybody.
Just drinking.
That's just what a lot of people do.
I know. Hey, yeah.
But the best part, man, is the people and the culture.
Yeah.
It's just, you get in trouble if you don't say good morning to someone.
And I think that should be the norm everywhere. But I know obviously you can't do that in, like, say, New York City. If you're the guy walking around saying good morning to every single person, you're that guy.
Yeah, you can't do it. I have like an adjustment period when I come back. It's like I go to check out at a grocery store and I'm like, hey, good afternoon. How you doing?
Yeah.
And they're like, Do you have a Bush's My Way card? And I'm like, oh, God. Yeah, sure. Here's my groceries. Let's just do this transaction. Versus you're checking out in the islands and it's,
Yeah.
Bridgel who's, or whatever at Right Way, who's checking you out. You're
Yeah.
asking about the kids. She's asking about your wife. It's a 10-minute process.
Island
Here.
time, baby. Yeah, because you got the time. You're already on the island. That's
Oh,
what I
but-
say about you.
Love it.
This might be an excuse for Sparrow being a slow boat. I'm like, why would you need to go fast? You're already on a boat. The goal has been achieved. Like, you're good. You're good.
Yeah. You probably got some yacht racers who probably disagree with you there. Huh?
Yeah, definitely 100%. Hey, what time do you have to go?
I got time.
Okay, cool.
It's 9:20. I got a haircut at 10:20, so
Beautiful.
I got time.
I wanted to ask you. So I've had to make that transition going from, and I don't know if you can talk about like the future a year from now. Oh, okay. Never mind then. We'll
Sort of.
Well, yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I just it's that interesting transition of being down there and living in the islands, and then making transition to coming back.
Yeah,
to-
what I'll say, event, like, for sure. So I recently got married back in April. Fun story. I am from Dexter, Michigan, just outside Ann Arbor, born and raised here.
Shout out Dexter.
And that's where we are right now, actually, which
Yeah.
is fantastic.
A lovely home.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm on like a 2-week holiday from the BVI right now, and what a chance that you're doing your speaking tour, and you
Yeah,
end
right.
up at the Dexter District Library doing this incredible speech last night about your sailing adventures and life lessons, and it just happened to coincide with when I'm back. That was so special.
very special for me too, man. Seriously.
So that was cool. But what I will say is that I got married, fell in love. I met a girl from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Wait,
Oh,
no, was it in that order?
what?
No. You got married and then you fell in love?
Oh no! We'll flip those.
Let's flip those around.
And
I took a chance, man,
Yeah,
Sometimes you
we-
got to roll the dice.
and so far so good. I don't think Morgan's gonna listen to this anyway, so we're probably
yeah,
safe.
she gets enough of you already, I think.
But a funny story is that I fell in love with a girl from Grand Rapids, Michigan, but we met at a Sabre Rock happy hour down in the British Virgin Islands,
Crazy.
which is crazy. But like we love the BVI. We love living on Virgin Gorda. Long term, our plan is to move back to Michigan. This is where our families are. This is where we grew up. We love it here, and this is where we want to raise our families, and have a house, and establish our life eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
And-
Sorry, go ahead.
and it's gonna be an adjustment for me, in a big way.
Huge.
Like,
way.
just what do I do during winter?
Yeah, that one's a little tricky. You have to get a little creative, for sure. And the pace of life definitely. So as being somebody who's spent not an entire winter, but at least like 3 to 4 months up in northern Michigan over the last bunch of years, trying to do things like work on these other books and other projects. Yeah.
So you're saying I got to become an author?
Well, I'm saying you definitely have to have, if you don't have a job per se that's keeping you busy 8 hours every single day, sort of thing, having something else that you can feel productive, not just like a hobby, but something. I don't know. I mean, that's where things like the podcast and sort of some of the content creation, but more for me. I mean, I've got like 3 different books that I've had to shelve because life gets in the way and jobs get in the way, trying to like work an 8-hour day and then continue to write a book and stuff. It's almost impossible if you're trying to actually make something that's good. You need that time where you can dedicate the first 4 hours of your day to that to really create something that's kind of nice. But having those projects is what saves. If I just went up to northern Michigan and didn't really have anything to do, I think I would I'd go Jack Nicklaus The Shining.
Well, that's good advice. Are you still writing right now? Now that you've done, you're not working 8 hours a day anymore. You're really building the speaking tour and the full sailing into oblivion brand here. Are you doing stuff
right now? Right now, the focus is the talks and the podcast. That's the main thing. And then once I sort of settle into exactly what's going to happen in the winter, that's when it'll sort of transition. Because typically the presentations and stuff are great for the summer and the fall, and you might get a couple in the wintertime. But typically the fall is like the really for what I've found, at least for my clientele, that's when they're trying to do these wrap-up events and things. I'm hoping to expand that, obviously. But the podcast will just be ongoing. I'm always just going to keep doing that because it's just nice to be able to sit down and chat with somebody. But for, when I wrote Sailing into Oblivion, I went down to the Caribbean and I sat on anchor, and that's what I did. I did 4 hours of that every single day without interruption, like not until it was finished, until I typed that last page. And that was the only way I could do it. All the other books, I have the addendum to it, which is basically the log book and the journal in all its entirety, and all the information. That was what I have that I'm trying to work on. And then there's a book about the doldrums, and then I don't know, the AT book. I started writing that. I have like 50,000 words or something.
You started writing or in logs?
No, that I wrote already. Yeah. And the only problem is I went back through, because I got sort of a bit of writer's block as I got into the last few states. And, I kind of was like, well, I don't want to waste my time. I'm going to just go back and I'll start editing and stuff. And I started reading this thing. I was like, this is the most boring book I have ever read in my life.
You bored yourself?
Oh, my God.
That's not a great sign.
Well, and I thought back to Sailing to Oblivion and how I kind of broke it up with that narration a little bit of there's the log entries that take you from the knockdown on March 17th to getting to like Cape Horn and all that. That's intermixed with the rest of the story. Well, I was like, man, I got to come up with some sort of shtick for this book. There's got to be something I can intermingle. And I thought about, the camping stories that are really funny, but that me and the guys would go out when I first started camping when I was like 18, and I had no idea what I was doing. I'm trying to learn. And there were, it's a compilation of me like getting lost in the woods, that story. And then, do a chapter of the AT. And then the next one would be like, oh, well, remember that time that I camped in a hole and it started raining. And I was basically sitting there for 5 hours just waiting. That sort of stuff. But the point is, though, is what would happen is I'd get pretty far into these projects and then I'd have to go get a job just to be able to feed myself. And then, I don't know, it's just... For me, and I know there's incredible people out there that can handle just doing this massive amount, juggling all these things. But I find that at least with the writing projects, having a couple of months where you can just do that and focus entirely on that, that's what I need to be able to actually complete those.
Do you enjoy the process of writing, or is it like, do you find it demanding? I mean, it feels like to me to try to write a book would be a gigantic undertaking. It would stress me to the moon.
It's a little bit daunting sometimes when you have those pitfalls of a bit of writer's block and you're not feeling creative. But when you do have that time, I just sort of kept, my mantra was that, hey, I'm sitting in the Caribbean, I'm on anchor, I'm on this boat, and for the next 4 hours, I'm just going to be trying to write some stuff out. That's not a bad way to spend a day. And then I get the whole rest of the day off. And so I kind of tried to trick my brain into thinking, okay, yeah, this is fun. But yeah, I mean, when you're trying to do other stuff and then you're trying to force yourself to write, that's pretty difficult. I was very lucky as well because I had the journals, I had the logbook, so I had a lot of information to sort of go off. I couldn't imagine just trying to create a fictional story. I think would be really, really hard. I've got a friend of mine, Barry, and he's been on the podcast. Yeah, Barry, he's got like 3 books. And it's this storyboard that he made up about this family that goes cruising, and there's intrigue and suspense and plots and all this sort of stuff. They're big, thick novels, and I'm just like,
totally fictional.
Yeah, totally. And it just, I don't know. It was one of those things where I read the first one and I was like, holy cow! Like, way to go, Barry. That's pretty impressive. And I think the first one's called Chicken of the Sea. And it's available on Amazon.
Yeah, shout out Barry.
Shout out Barry. Yeah.
What's it? Does he have a last name? You remember?
I can't remember.
Barry, Chicken of the
back
Sea.
On that.
Find it on Amazon.
Pre 100 episode, something like that. But yeah,
hey, don't you have a children's book? You were telling me about this a little bit.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that?
I got the first of the bunch of illustrations back from the illustrator, this guy Alex, and he's fantastic. Like, I essentially he showed me a few examples, and I looked at it early on when we were trying to make these agreements for it, because it's a 6-book series, and I had finished the manuscript quite a long time ago. We found my sister Ina, shout out Ina. We found she found the illustrator, introduced me, and then he shows me the examples. Okay, that's great, blah blah blah. And then I get super busy again. Once again, got to get this big job, working 100% of the time. And I said, I was like, listen, you're probably not even gonna hear from me for the next 4 months until I finish this gig at camp. And lo and behold, I hit him up as soon as I finished and had a little time to breathe. And he had done quite a bit of work, and he's, for him, because there's no interaction, he's kind of like, well, I hope this is okay. And he sends me a couple of these, and I look at it, and I'm just like, this is so beyond perfect. The idea, I don't want to spoil any of it, but essentially, it's one of those where you can read it to a group, or, you can sit there one-on-one and read it to a kid. But essentially, you open it up, and on one page is the illustration of what's going on, but that bleeds underneath the other side, which is a nice, unrolled scroll, old-timey piratey thing with all the text on it. And the first image from the first page, it knocked my socks off, because it's a children's book, so you could think, oh, these are just going to be basic illustrations. They're not really going to have a whole lot of depth to them. It's me as a kid sitting there on Walloon, knee deep in the water, and I'm playing with a toy boat, but the reflection in the water of the boat is Sparrow. And I'm just like, I got goosebumps just saying it. I was like, holy cow, that's amazing. And I noticed it right off the bat. And, I could see when we did a video call the other night, and when I said it, I was like, I was blown away. He must have been able to see it, because his biggest smile came on his face. And I was like, just keep going, man. I want to get this thing out by Christmas. These are awesome.
That makes sense.
So
how do you publish this? How does this get printed? Where does it get printed?
Sticking right with Amazon. I get to format it all. I throw it right into, I get to size it.
So Amazon has a publishing arm for...
Oh, yeah. Kindle,
is that what you're doing with Sailing into Oblivion still?
That's what Sailing... Yeah, totally.
Cool.
And honest to God, I spent a year of my life trying to get a publisher to agree to, put out my book, and I was writing all these proposals and all this stuff, and anybody that sort of even bit on it a little bit, they wanted to change that book like crazy. And I kept thinking of Motissier and how he didn't even like to edit his own book. He kind of felt, and his books are a little different for sure, but they're also legendary, and they always will be. They're going to go on forever because they are so unique. But essentially, he would get that written word down, and he was like, that's what I was writing in that moment. It's perfect. Don't touch it. You'll screw it up. And I kind of thought to myself, eventually, I was like, I don't want to change this book so that it sounds like every other book. I want mine to be a little bit different. And then once I found out you could just do it on Amazon, it didn't cost you anything. You just give Jeff his cut. Mm-hmm. Boom. I was like, you know what? And now listening to a lot of podcasts of pretty prominent people in all facets of life, like on Lex Friedman's podcast and stuff, they go and these guys on current events and a lot of it's politics or whatever, they write these books and they're like, no, I just self-publish them on Amazon now. Because, who cares if it's never going to see the New York Times bestseller list. They're like, I've got an audience already. I'm doing it for them anyway. And it's just easy, because then you're putting out exactly what you want to put out.
Do you regret your decision to not keep searching a publisher and have them edit it, or are you happy with this is now
totally
mine
with it. Yeah,
forever?
Yeah.
It's cool. I mean, I find it really cool that you have a book like that. It's almost a legacy. Statement to have that
feels amazing.
Outlives you. That's something that will always exist.
Let's hope so. I mean, and I've been very fortunate, and I think it's through a lot of the talks and things like that helps keep the book alive. Because I heard a long time ago when I was doing all my research, it said essentially if you self-publish on Amazon, the average is that you'll sell 250 books and then it disappears.
Yeah, new books get published, you get pumped down the algorithm, whatever.
Because they have, don't know, 5 million books available on there, something like that. And yeah, it just kind of keeps dropping and dropping. But, fortunately, it keeps selling. And so it stays on that first page when you said type in sailing books. And it's like, holy cow. It came out at the tail end of 2019. And now it's 2023, so it's been out there for a number of years. And I don't know, I am starting to feel a little bit of pressure to get something else out there. And the one that I'm kind of most excited about, besides the children's book, which I think is it's kind of a different deal, is the book about the doldrums. Because,
you've been talking about this one for a while.
Yeah, well, the doldrums have always fascinated me, and this one will be a little bit more of a, I don't want to say professionally done book, but essentially, instead of just talking about my experiences in the doldrums, I want to actually get some of the research, some of the history, all that, because I want the reader to be able to not only experience it through what I went through crossing it, 7-8 times, but also I want them to get a nice little history lesson of the pitfalls, and because it's got such, and these ships are sailing down back when they didn't know what the heck was going on, and they're in the trade winds, just like, dude, this is awesome.
Blasting around.
And then all of a sudden, boom, the wind quits, and they're floating there for days, and the water's, running out, and they're the horses are looking pretty tasty because the food's running, and the blistering sun, and they talk about these guys being down there and literally turning like black from being just absolutely sunburnt. And
I can't imagine they had SPF 50 sunscreen back in the day.
No, and it's 90 something degrees, so you can't like cover up really. It's just, it's such a fascinating.
So is there a lot of
stores?
There are going to be a lot of historical context in this combined with your experiences, obviously sailing through them.
Exactly. So it's gonna, I have some pretty interesting, because there's been times where I had an engine and I could motor through some of it, but most of the trips that was just not an option. I just had to do it like the old timey sailors, and when the wind came up, you took advantage of it, and when it didn't, you just sat there and you waited, and the madness creeps in, and the heat. I can remember just being down below, and I would use those old school handkerchiefs, and I'd get them wet, put them in the freezer, pull them out, and I'd lay them on top of me to try and lay down in that bunk, because otherwise I was sweating so profusely, because down below it's 100 degrees.
Ugh.
Up on deck, you're in the sun. Like, it was just, it's
not
one of those
breath of wind to cool you down.
Yeah. And
I wouldn't do good.
It's not easy. So, but those challenges are also when you breach that, like say you're headed south and you get into the southeast trades. Glory.
Is there ever a better feeling? Like, I remember me and my wife went on, this is not compared to that, but we went on like a 3-week camping trip in the America West. We're living out the back of a Jeep, seeing all these national parks. It was an awesome trip. We went and finally it was in like November though, so it was cold.
Yeah.
Cozying up every night in the back, which was great because there was no crowds. So I do recommend that in that month, but I think I do October next time. Kids are still in school, but it's not quite so cold. But anyway, went to Crater Lake National Park in Oregon, which is incredible. And we're coming home, and our plan was to go to a dispersed campsite. There's no running water. It's just somewhere out in the woods. It's totally free. And we kind of just both go look at each other, and we're just like, do you want to get a hotel room tonight? And that Motel 6 has never been sweeter than it was on that night. Oh, we were just like a bed, and we ordered a pizza. So it's not like we really achieved much there, but there's just something when you've put yourself in an uncomfortable situation and then you come out of it that feels amazing.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. I've always said like that, going through hardship to then get to even just ordinary, it makes that extraordinary. I use it out in the sailing world where you go through just like a big 5-6 day patch of ugly weather. And then you get out to that nice, bright, sunny day, which, a bright, sunny day, if you would have just left the dock, would have been great. It's that's what you want. But when you go through all that ugly to get out there, all of a sudden, that bright, sunny day is like the greatest day in the world. And that, to be honest with you, that really added to this idea of taking on challenges and what it does to your life, giving it that purpose, giving you that drive, and then also teaching you and making it so that you grow as a person and see what you're really made of, test yourself, all that sort of stuff. Those are sort of the two, I guess, themes that I'm trying to really be able to articulate better than I am right now with my presentations. Those are sort of the the things. And I guess, side note though, one of the reasons that I wanted to do the big figure 8 voyage around the Americas and then around Antarctica, shout out Randall Reeves, who pioneered that route, was when I did my trip, my sort of Shangri-La, and I think that's the title of the chapter, was when you round Cape Horn and you get far enough north that you're out of the Southern Ocean, and I reached the variables, and I had 3 days of 10 to 12 knot winds with fluffy, perfect clouds, no squalls. The swell was gone. The waves were gentle. And I have one little video clip that wouldn't make sense to anybody else. But I'm just describing these clouds, and I'm just sitting there. And I remember those days as being some of the greatest days of my life, by far, where I was finally out of the evil, the danger, all that sort of stuff. And I was back into this normal world of like just normal, pleasant sailing. But for me, that had been 4.5 months of that, plus the 2 months prior where I was thinking about those 4 months in the Southern Ocean. And man, but it kind of got me thinking. I was like, man, if I did the figure 8, how good would that spot feel? So if I'm out there for 300 something days and then I finally get there, ooh-wee.
So weakness.
Yeah. But
It's not just that, like sailing time too. I mean, you worked for years saving every penny to be able to buy Sparrow, and then putting the years in of working on Sparrow and getting her ready for this voyage and getting yourself ready and learning about the boat. Like it makes total sense to me. I mean, you put so much time and effort and thought and into that, and then that was the Everest coming around Horn, man. And so it was getting out of horrible, terrible oceans and sailing conditions and having a champagne moment, but it was the years of like struggle and work that you'd put in to get to that exact moment too. That probably made it that much sweeter.
I mean, I was definitely lucky that a lot of that stuff I found very interesting and fun. Working on the boat and trying to fix it and make it better and stronger and all that stuff. But kind of the interesting thing I'm trying to figure out is how you sort of equate that to like everyday life, because just on the smallest scale, it's like, I got to clean up the yard. And how do I make that challenge and that task feel, I don't know, how do I make that comparison, that leap from, okay, I'm going through this bad weather, but it's a good thing because when I get to the end of that, it's going to make it that much better. How do I make that sort of make sense in the world of, like yard work or a really crummy week at work or something like that? That's what I'm trying to noodle around in my brain.
I think when you figure that out, that's how you get paid the big bucks. You connect those dots, my friend. Nike's gonna be calling. They're gonna want Sailing into Oblivion speaking at the yearly sales conference. That's what they're gonna want.
Oh, the adventures I could have.
So would that be your long term? Like, let's say you could go sailing 3 or 4 months every year on Sparrow.
Yeah.
Come back, do speaking arrangements, make enough money to put the food on the table and fix the boat and then some. Would that be the dream life setup where you sail and then you speak and maybe we write a little bit and we sell some merch and we sell some books and then we go sail again?
I think
is that
so.
kind of long term? You'd love to still be on the water.
Well,
and still crossing oceans.
I have this. I call it my retirement plan, but it wouldn't be retirement from all the stuff that I'm doing. It's just basically when I get to a point where it kind of becomes a little self-sustaining, it would be. And this is probably after maybe 1 or 2 other solo voyages, because I'm definitely not done with that on Sparrow. I have to prove to myself that last voyage didn't just end it all for me. And that's a mental game more than anything, I think. But essentially, the retirement plan was always, once I get to a point where I've done what I've wanted to do with Sparrow, it's time to pass that on to somebody else, somebody younger, who's ready, who's hungry, who needs to go out and have those experiences. And I'm probably going to give it away for a song, sort of thing. But then it's to find the bigger vessel on the West Coast, fix it up, that sort of thing. I'm talking maybe 45, 55 feet, something like that. An old, hulking sort of catamaran kind of boat.
Mm-hmm.
Something strong, but needs a lot of work so I can get it cheap. Fix it up for a year or two, and then with other people on multiple legs of the journey, return, bring that boat all the way around the world back to the East Coast. So via the South Pacific and some of the very far-flung islands, Easter Island, places like that, through the Indian Ocean, around, obviously you got to go around Cape of Good Hope, but, stopping in places in South Africa and then slowly back up Caribbean to the East Coast. And I'm thinking 5-year trip, something like
Stopping
that.
everywhere.
Anybody can come along.
Hello style,
all
bringing
sort of
friends
stuff.
on.
Exactly. And, it's not something, I don't ever really see myself transitioning from this like solo sailing YouTube guy who just puts his experiences out there for people to be able to either learn stuff or at least just see what it's like, to being sort of more in that sort of soap opera sailing, like on this episode we go from blah blah, which are fine. I think they're really entertaining and stuff like that, but it's just not something I want to do with my time. But
it's a lot of, that's a full time.
Ton of work.
You don't have time.
Job.
They're not writing books, and like that's the amount of editing that goes. They're like movies. The guys now on YouTube have incredibly high quality, and the competition that they're facing. There's a ton of these channels out there, so you have to deliver to that quality of. These guys got $10,000 cameras and they're filming on. Like
I know,
it's
360 cameras.
Yeah, it's full on video. They're full on videographers now, so it's impressive. But I put a lot of respect into the amount of work that goes into what those channels are putting out too.
Oh yeah, and it's for me, it's one of those things where I'm in that experience to be fully immersed in it. And if I got the sense of mind to clip a GoPro on the back while I'm about to go catch some rain out of my sail, that I can handle. But yeah, trying to make it exciting or all that sort of stuff. It's just I've done it once, and there's like a full series from that last voyage on YouTube. But like that was a lot. That was a lot to do during, and it took me out of the experience quite a bit. And then when you get back trying to edit all that stuff together, it's just I'd much rather try and write a book for sure.
Yeah, I get you. So. It seems like what you're doing is working though. You're up to 15,000 plus followers on Instagram, I think.
We just hit 34,000.
Okay. Look at that. That's on Instagram,
which is strange.
That's like a serious number.
I don't know why that happened the way it did, because it all happened this summer. But
you started putting out a bunch of short form
just
content of you sailing.
Yeah, I guess. But that's kind of it's been nice because people can reach me.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, like they can DM me on there and possibly for things like different presentations or sponsorships, anything like that.
Have you looked into monetizing Instagram at all? Is that an opportunity? I don't know. I don't know anything about that.
Like
how many followers you need or
no
doing ads. So you're not even worried about that.
No. That's one avenue where I'm just kind of treating that as like hey, this is what I'm up to today, and this is where I am in the world. Just in case, somebody is kind of like, oh, hey, well, that guy looks like he'd be fun to come and have an event with, and let's get him out here to speak and that sort of stuff.
Is that the same with YouTube?
No, YouTube for me has just been a way for me to share the raw footage, the experience of being out there. And, you get caught up in it a little bit, so you're putting out the YouTube shorts and stuff, which is essentially Instagram or TikTok, but in YouTube. But for the videos and stuff, I really like to, I have a bunch of different categories as far as like one of them's just like sailing views, where I'll go clip a GoPro on and then leave it for 5-10 minutes and I'm out sailing, and then I'll just upload that as, sailing at sunset, sailing view, boom. And that's all people get, is they get a little 10-minute thing where they can turn it on, look at it and be like, wow, that's pretty. And that's fine for me. It's not going to get a million hits by any means, but that's sort of how I've wanted to cultivate that channel of just raw footage. It doesn't always have to have me sitting there yammering on. I do enough of that on the podcast.
I do like the videos though when you narrate, when we're seeing you do stuff.
Yeah.
Like let me show you, talk about me reefing my mainsail.
I like the voiceover ones. Those are kind of fun.
I like those a lot.
Yeah, but
you're not worried about monetizing that either. You're just
that's monetized. Yeah,
it is.
That generates a little bit, but you have to be putting out some content that people are eating up for it to generate a decent amount of money. I really wanted more than anything just to be able to get that merch line in there. Because I like the shirts.
I think that's
people like the shirts and stuff.
That's a big revenue. I mean, you look at all these channels and you look at these companies, like this is where they're making money on merch, man.
It's tough though, because unless you're prepared to work for it and you have your own stock and you're getting your shirts made and you're doing the shipping, when the reality is, you go through these companies for, influencer type people, you do your line, and they're, you might make like $4 off of a shirt and you might sell like one shirt every couple of days. I mean, who knows what these other people are doing? They might be selling, 50 shirts a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Bingo. So I don't know. It's a crazy world. I'll tell you, it is a bit of a trap though, because there are times where I find myself putting a whole lot of time into it, that sort of stuff. And you're like, hold on, man. Life is going by out there. And you're just sort of like, I got to turn this phone on. I got to turn the computer off. I got to just go outside.
Yeah.
I just got to go outside. And, I could see how.
It's easy in today's world.
Yeah. Well, you can get
it's
just
so
wrapped up
easy.
in it. Yeah. I try my very best to create stuff and not consume it. It's very hard to go and like put some post on like Instagram or something like that, and then not sort of scroll through a little bit. You see one of your friends or something like that's doing something, and then that leads to the next, and then suddenly you wake up and you're like, it's 3 a.m.
I've got to be up in 3 hours.
That doesn't happen to me very often. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird though. There is this sort of contradiction where I'm telling people to go out and find their own little adventure, no matter how big or small. And I'm trying to inspire them to go out and experience this sort of stuff. And yet at the same time, I'm pumping out this content. It's trying to have them sit and watch this content. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like I don't know. I've always struggled with that a little bit. And there's been times where I'm like, I should just shut all this stuff off. Cut, like disappear the channels, disappear the Instagram, all that stuff, and like force people to go out. But that's, I don't know.
No, I understand the conflict that you're having, but the problem is then you're not gonna be able to reach them with your message. With the bigger message that you're not being able to share. This is how you're gonna get your word across in today's world. And if you don't do that, I think you're gonna sell yourself short and not reach people. And the real power is I think you're going to empower. Going to your speech last night, it was awesome. You saw my buddy when we were sitting at dinner.
He was pretty stoked.
He was super stoked. To the point of he took the message out of it and he summed it up beautifully. He was like, I loved how you wrapped it all together. And you talked about this sailing story, but you said you're going to go through the rough seas to earn the beautiful days.
Yeah.
And that was I thought it was a poetic way of saying everything you said in that hour-long talk. And I personally believe that that's where your real power is in this motivational speaking, that you tie back to the adventures that you've been on. And no offense, I don't think your 2-minute sailing video on YouTube is going to change someone to be like, yes, challenge and adventure. But I think that video is maybe how you get in front of someone.
Right.
Do that, because you're such an engaging person with
true.
This amazing personality and amazing story to tell. And I think you're really starting to fine tune the speech into a way now. I've seen you last night that it does that. It was a motivating experience, not only to get outside for me, for someone who loves sailing. I was like, I want to get back on the water now.
Like,
maybe not do that.
Maybe not that water.
Yeah, but I want to go hobie sailing.
Yeah, right.
And but also, you brought it back to just every day overcoming whatever someone might be dealing with, and I think there's a real opportunity for you, man.
Well, thank you, Dabbler. I appreciate that, man. I'm just going to keep on plugging away and keep trying, because I definitely believe in it, and I think there is something to be said for having, having your own thing. I mean, I love working for other people and representing a company like Bitter End and stuff. That was 10 of the best years I'll ever have, and I'll always think so fondly of them for sure. And who knows, you may end up back there for a little bit, but there's something, and I don't know if it's getting older and you start thinking about this more, but when you create something on your own that's helping you sort of, create a living, it's hard. It's a risk. You never know what's going to happen, but if it does sort of work, I think it's something you can be very proud of. And that's what I'm trying to do at this point.
Well, good luck. I believe in you.
Thank you, Dabbler, and thank you for coming on, man, dude. Like,
friend
I
of
know
the pod.
Yeah, dude. I love doing these this podcast. And I will say, just side note, like I don't have my phone, but I received a great email, and I get these now more and more where dude just is like, hey, I just want to let you know I finished this voyage, and it'll show like a map of the Atlantic, and he's like gone all the way around it. He's like, your podcast got me motivated to actually do it. I've been thinking about it for years. And he's like, dude, you said it enough times. And I was finally like, this is the year, and thank you. And I'm just like, oh, that's, if I can do that for one person, man, it's all been worth it, right?
Changing the world.
One person at a time. One wave at a time. All right, Dobbs. Well, other than that, man, have a safe trip back down to the BVI.
Thanks. I go on Sunday.
Dude, that's crazy. Are you excited to go back down?
Always.
Always, yeah.
Come on, dude.
Well, I can't, I can't thank you enough for just all the years, dude. All the years.
Many more to come.
Many more to come. And I don't know. I'm trying to wrap this up somehow poetically, but I don't know. I can't.
No, it's been great to see you.
Yeah.
What the universe bringing us together, dude. 1 week I'm here, you happen to be in Dexter. For each go our separate ways. It's pretty powerful stuff.
Excellent.
And pleasure was all mine.
Thank you, Dobbs.